Self-care is a really popular idea, at least recently, or maybe it's been popular for a while and I've only just now been exposed to it. But self-care really comes down to taking care of oneself, doing the things that are important to you, that make you happy, that give you some feeling of contentment or even purpose. And I think self-care can come in a variety of different forms. It can be hobbies, it can be sports, or just leisure activities that you do just for the sake of enjoyment or pleasure. But I think the recent kind of look at, or the recent fixation with self-care has really come down to ways of coping with stress in your life. So self-care then becomes the kind of antidote for dealing and coping with stress. So it's important for us to reflect on and think about how we identify our need for self-care. What are the triggers that we can have, we can observe in our daily life that show that we need to exercise some self-care? For me, it's always kind of a reaction or interaction I have with other people when I start to realize that I need to take some time for myself. Either I'll be impatient or just there will be some misunderstandings that kind of emerged for no reason other than my kind of confusion. Or it'll just be a matter of feeling overwhelmed or feeling kind of like you're not able to deal with whatever the situations are that you're having to deal with. So that for me is kind of my trigger for knowing that self-care needs to be a priority. I need to put this into practice, and please don't get me wrong here. I'm not a master of self-care. I'm actually woefully terrible at exercising self-care, but I'm getting better, and I'm trying to find ways every day of putting my need for self-care into practice, and even just identifying little shortcuts in order to feel a little bit more whole before I kind of re-enter the fray of daily life. One of the things that I find really important when trying to exercise self-care is having a way of dealing with feelings of guilt. So there's always this sense, or I always have this sense of, well, I'm exercising self-care, what am I taking away? So now I can't work as much, or maybe I can't do other things in my life that are also important. I can't fulfill other responsibilities in my life. Dealing with that feeling of guilt is really important. Otherwise, any self-care activities you engage with are really going to be futile. They're going to be worthless. Because when you're trying to enjoy yourself, if you're harboring feelings of guilt, it can become really kind of counterproductive to even bother trying to exercise any feelings of or any self-care activities. So in order to kind of avoid those guilty feelings, I try to just reserve judgment. I try to reserve my self-judgment, because what guilt really comes down to is just you're judging yourself for choosing to give yourself the care that you need over kind of taking care of fulfilling your responsibilities. And I don't think people should necessarily feel guilty about that. I think that comes about because of those feelings of self-judgment, or those thoughts of self-judgment. So if we can reserve those thoughts, engage in self-care practices, and then after we've finished caring for ourselves, what I usually find is that the responsibilities that I need to fulfill either weren't as critical as I thought they were, or I'm able to fulfill those responsibilities in a much more efficient way. So self-care becomes kind of a life hack for working more productively. And I want to caution, or I want to at least point out that self-care doesn't have to take hours and hours and hours out of your life. I often exercise self-care in a matter of 5, 10, 15 minutes. If I have a meeting that ends early, or another meeting that is delayed or canceled, rather than just throwing myself into my email or finding something else to do, I'll just lay on the couch for 5 minutes and just kind of zen out. Or I'll play some video games, because it's an activity that I enjoy doing. 5 or 10 minutes of self-care can really reinvigorate your mindset for when you have to go back into the fun and games of our daily lives.